Jeff, thank you for coming on the show, man. Really appreciate having you.
Yeah.
Um, I actually started telling Faden about how I met you. I mean, obviously, we met in the industry. Your firm is to date one of the very few companies that signed up with us and then cut their ties with us. But you and I fortunately maintained our relationship, which I actually make a point in saying that because um, it's okay, I think, in work in business, if you have adventures that don't work out, it doesn't matter because there's always some good that could come of it. You learn lessons, and in this case, not only did we learn lessons, but I was able to maintain this friendship with you, which has been great, and I appreciate you coming on. What always drew me and I wanted to have the relationship and I wanted to maintain our friendship about you was that I've come across a lot of successful people in this industry, but what really struck um, with you was that you just, as an individual, you always came off very well adjusted, very secure, but also just fun, man. Like, I mean, in our industry, and you know it too, like, there's way too many people that take themselves way too seriously. There's
Oh,
enormous egos. It's hard to connect to people. Almost some of them don't even act like human beings, just the way they interact and they eat and they talk. But and then you come across someone like you who's enormously successful, but who cares? You're a human being and you're cool to talk to. I remember when and this goes back a long time ago. I think you and I met more than 10 years ago or close to it. The Christmas gift you were sending out to all your clients was this really cool book that was, like boys and tricks that they can use. And it was like a really cool book that you could read through, and it taught you how to build like bows and arrows and survive in the woods, which is so cool, man. Because in our industry, everyone's like, "Oh, which wine club do you belong to?" It's like, come on, man, relax. And then you are sending this super cool book. So that always stuck with me in that you can be successful, but you can also be real humble, real cool, enjoy the little things in life. You don't. So I'd love to hear about you, man, today. Just hear about how you got started, what brought you into the industry, what your journey was. Just love to hear more about you, Jeff.
sure. Thanks. I think, my journey's been a little bit different than most coming into the investment industry. I think I got a lot of my inspiration from my dad. He was a businessman, and when I graduated from university, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. I had some friends of mine that were another buddy of mine who'd graduated from school. He was like, "Look, we're building up this contracting company, and we're doing business all over Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Northwest Ontario." And it was like, you come out of university and you can just pull your pockets inside out. Basically, there's no money's going to fall out of your pockets on graduation day.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, yeah, we all do.
Yeah.
And so it was an opportunity to kind of pursue, a business opportunity. And so over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, we built this business to include a small window manufacturing plant. We were doing business. We had, probably 20, 25 employees. And I got to the point where I was like, this is great, but this isn't what I really wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I had an opportunity to interview with a guy at Canada Trust in the investment business. And despite the fact that my hair was long, he still hired me. It was the first thing he said to me when I walked into the interview. He goes, "You need a haircut." So I got the job and I got the haircut. And
Nice.
and so that was my foray into the investment business. I also wanted to live take a little bit of an adventure and move outside of living in Winnipeg. And I ended up in Vancouver here working for a mid-size independent firm that had a really good reputation in town here. It was called MK Wong and Associates. And I worked there for about 4.5 years. And during that period, we'd been bought by HSBC. And so here I was again, having worked at Canada Trust, going to work at a small, mid-size, independently owned firm where you can actually make an impact and have influence on the results and the growth of the firm, back to working for this, behemoth international organization. Sure. And so, fortunately for me, two of the guys I worked with had the same sort of attitude that I did, that they didn't want to work for a big firm and wanted to have a small independent firm. And so in late 1997, Vertex One Asset Management was born. And right from the beginning, the ideology was to try and keep things as simple as possible. It's a very sophisticated business. It can be very complicated. And so wherever you can look for areas to simplify it was sort of a cornerstone of my philosophy in terms of how to build the business.
Right.
Certainly it gets more complicated the more people you add. So it brings us to culture, right, which is really important in any kind of work environment.
Absolutely.
And I think, the key to culture is you want to be able to hire people that are, and it's tough to evaluate, but are independent and will take ownership of their responsibilities and obviously they have career aspirations, but we hired one girl who, she just wanted to be the best administrator in the business. Right? She didn't want to be an executive. She didn't want to be a supervisor. She just wanted to be the best administrator. And just an absolute joy to work with someone who loved their work, right?
It's funny because you keep going to that. I love that you keep saying, like, earlier on you were saying you didn't love what you do and that's why you wanted to switch. And now you're talking about someone who, you hired that they loved what they do. So I hate that I interrupted you, but it's cool that I wanted to ask you about that and then you kept coming to it. So I thought I'd ask you to just highlight that. How important do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I think, it goes back, for me, it goes back to my background to sports. Mm-hmm. And, my daughter, we go to her soccer game on Sunday, and after the game, she comes up to me and I told her how well she played, and she says, "Don't criticize my soccer." Gets in the car, gets in the back seat, and doesn't want to talk to me all the way home because she lost, right? And she's normally not like that when she loses, but this one, it upset her. And it's about, sports is about winning. And I know in today's environment, everybody wants to hand out a participation badge, but
yes, indeed.
that's not setting you up very well for life, right?
No.
And the kids are keeping score.
And the kids are keeping score. And another daughter of mine, when she was 6 years old, the very first soccer game she ever played, the other team scored within the first 5 minutes of the game, scored about 3 goals against them. And she pulled the kids together and rallied them and said, "Come on, we can go get these guys." Like, at 6 years old, it was important. I didn't teach her that. It's natural for kids to want to win. And so I think, I played a lot of competitive sports growing up. I played football right up until the university level. And I think, the idea in football is you're always got to move ahead, move down the field, and it comes from winning. And it's the same in business, right? And I think you find a lot of successful people in business who have successful careers in sport, because sport teaches you about winning. It teaches you about, especially football. I played basketball, I played hockey. Football's one of the true real team sports where, you may have superstars on the field with you, but you need every guy doing his job in order for the team to advance and to be successful.
So, you were talking about when you were being interviewed, you had long hair, but you were given a chance anyways. I find that I've always been somewhat unorthodox in people that I hire, because I don't care so much about their school. I don't care so much about their, experience. What I do care about is their attitude, and going back to what you were saying, wanting to be independent, and also the culture that you have at your company, and wanting to preserve that by bringing in the right people who fit into that culture. So did you ever find out why you were given that opportunity, even though you needed the haircut? But what was it that he saw in you? And then what is it that you look for in people that you hire?
Excuse me. Yeah, that was an interesting one, because I think I met all the other criteria that the guy was looking for, in terms of,
Right.
I had a university education, I had a sales background, I had, I just came from, I had the sports background, I had the list of accomplishments. And so I think he was willing to overlook the the hair
Right.
aspect, and it's like, and I've learned through life not to be, again, people can be very quick to judge on appearance, right? And it was funny. I remember moving to Vancouver and having that conversation with my brother. At the time, he had his hair really long. I was like, dude, it does affect what people think about you,
Right.
And he was, he was like, well, it doesn't matter. I don't want them judging me like that, right? They have to get to know me, right? And there's some truth in that, but there's also the fact that people do judge you on your appearance, right?
Sure.
When I say I had long hair, it wasn't like really long hair, like, it was just longer than the short business cut that I think the guy was used to, right?
No, but that's a real good point you raise, and it's something that I've talked about as well, in that bottom line is, when you don't know people, you're going to have to go by what you see, initially speaking, until you get to know them. And there's like, as soon as we started this business, I always wore the suits and the ties, just because I thought, look, maybe wearing a suit and a tie doesn't make me a professional, but looking sloppy is definitely not going to help my case.
That's
So
right.
like, give yourself what little advantage you can. If you want to go for a job looking sloppy and thinking, well, they should see past this and they should see the diamond within. Yeah, true. But, it doesn't help if you go in and you're looking sloppy and you don't look like you take a great deal of yourself. You take good care of yourself. And I think that's an important point you're making.
Absolutely, because it's such a competitive situation when you're out there looking for careers, that looking your best, it isn't going to hurt you, right?
Right.
It's only, and the other guys are going to be looking their best, so you've got to be competitive, right?
Right, exactly. Give yourself what advantages you can have.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to hear about the story was great. That was a good overview, but I'd love to hear about some of the crappy parts, man. Some of the parts that really sucked, that you had to dig deep, or because and I want to put that aside, and I don't mean to ask to pry or get into a, you know, private conversation that you may not be comfortable sharing, but one of the aspects to running a business is that, you know, you come in and like you said, it's competition, game time, you got to perform. And it's all good and well, and we all learn to do that, and the longer you do it, the better you get at it. But one thing that people don't realize sometimes is that while you come in and you're ready to compete, you also have a whole other set of life, your private life, and like everyone has challenges in their private lives, whether it's with their, you know, parents or kids or wives or whatever, you know, husbands, whatever the case may be. And it doesn't matter what's going on, you have to come in and you have to perform. You're expected to compete every day, and you have to have your game face on every day. So love to hear about some of the challenges you faced and how you dealt with them, but also any tips on how you're able to get yourself in the right frame of mind so that even though you're facing a challenge outside, you come in, you're able to get yourself in gear and just perform.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ali, because there's certain, you know, my mind is now racing with all the things, the challenges that I faced. And so many people on the surface, you know, you look at people and you think, you know, I guess for me, you know, I've got these 4 lovely daughters that are awesome. And, you know, for many years had the sort of, you know, that perfect picture of the beautiful wife and the house and the family and the kids, right? And, you know, a number of years ago, my wife made the decision, you know, not to be part of that anymore. Didn't want to be part of her children's lives and didn't want to be part of my life. And so that's a real big challenge every day getting up. And I think, you know, one of the things that I had to do was lead by example for my kids as well, right? That you carry on. And I think, you know, it's just the fortitude. I don't know that I give most of the credit to my parents, right? in the way I was brought up and just my belief system. But I do believe that, you know, you recognize that you have to take care of yourself, and you have to take care of business in order to take care of other people.
Right.
And I think these challenges, they come, it's just, sometimes it's a big curve in the road, sometimes it's a smaller curve in the road. But if you're driving through the mountains and you come to a curve in the road, you got to steer around the corner, right? And you start to get shifted in your seat and you get moved around and get a little uncomfortable. But you have to have the belief that you're going to get yourself back on that straight road again. And I think looking ahead instead of looking in the rearview mirror, everybody looks in the back, looks at history, looks at where you're coming from, looks at the things, but you kind of got to focus on what's ahead and how do you create an environment. And you have to lean on people, right? If there's people that can help you, you need to ask for help, right? People love to help people.
Right.
Especially friends, families. You know, I tell my youngest daughter all the time, it's like, she goes, "Oh, I don't want any help. I can do it myself." I said, "Well, everybody gets help. You know, you need a little help with something. It's not a bad thing."
Man, that is so cool that you're saying that. No, you know what? Because I'll tell you this, man. You know, you're obviously you're well put together. You're obviously successful, and it might be easy for, like you were saying before, people make assumptions. It's easy for someone to take a look at you and be like, what does this guy know about challenges? You know, he's got everything, but they don't know what, you know, trouble you've gone through, what challenges you faced. Or people might look at you and say, well, you know, Jeff would never ask for help. But that humility to ask for help is so important. And like for someone like you, who's, you know, I hate to use this term, but fuck it, I'll use it. You're like, you come off as such an alpha male. And then for you to be humble enough to say, you know what, man, you got to ask for help. Have the humility to ask for help. That is so big, man. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you having the humility to say that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like I watch my youngest daughter struggle with that, right? And in asking for help. She doesn't want to ask her teachers for help. And I'm like, you know, trying to get her to understand that that's what people are there for.
Absolutely.
And it makes it a lot easier when you share with your friends and support people, you know, the things you're dealing with. You know, there's certain things you might want to deal with yourself, certainly. And if you feel you can get through it and carry on, that's great, right? I'm sure without anything sort of coming to mind, I know that I've done that in the past as well.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
There's certain things, yeah, I just, you know, keep them to myself and deal with them and move on. And then, but the world's a big place and it's a hard place to live. And, you know, like I say, there's always lots of people that want to help.
I agree with that. And what I find interesting is that a lot of times people think the challenges they're facing are so unique or they're embarrassed to talk about it. And the reality is they're not. Like, there's so many things that I face and I've had people around me face. And then we end up talking about it and you're like, oh shit, that's not even nearly as unique as I thought. And there's going to be a bunch of people who can identify with you to varying degrees, of course. But like you said, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was having a conversation with one of the university kids that I've been in touch with, and he was so embarrassed to tell me about this one challenge he's facing. And he just couldn't, and it took him like 30 minutes. And he finally said it, and I was like, dude, like, welcome to the club. Like, every one of us, shit,
Well,
you know?
It's worse today with social media, right?
Right.
Because Instagram is all about look at me, and everybody's posting the perfect life on there.
Right.
The highlight reel.
And it's like, wow, look at that person. They've got it all. They don't have any problems, right? They're living the life. And so then people who see that think, oh, I've got to aspire to have that kind of life. I don't want to be seen as having problems, etc. Right? So I think it's even harder today for kids to come to that conclusion that they can ask for help.
You're 100%
that their problems
right.
are not so unique, right?
You're 100% right.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things you were saying is you need to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. And that's something that I've talked about quite a bit and I think is important. And there's so much embedded in that. You have to respect yourself enough to take care of yourself like you would anybody around you. But also, how you expected to take care of anyone around you or be good to society if you're not taking care of yourself. So sometimes I find that people feel selfish in saying, oh, I need to do something for myself. And certainly there are things you could do for yourself that are over the top that, you know, may be considered selfish. But to take care of yourself on a basic level of your health, your nutrition, your sleep, you know, your social circle is critical. So I'd love to hear a bit more about, you know, the things that you do to keep yourself strong, to keep yourself fit, to keep yourself mentally able to deal with the challenges that come to you day to day.
Yeah, I think, you know, I find with, you know, I've always, you know, since I was a young teenager, you know, I started lifting weights to play football, and I've always worked out, and working out in itself is always, you know, I still have that as part of a regular routine, but staying active involved. So I like to play tennis. I play hockey a couple times a week. I do a kickboxing class. I only started doing that like 2 years ago. Right. So at the age of 58, I started kickboxing.
Nice.
Right. And, you know, you got to be doing things that are where you're using your whole body, right? And it's much more fun to do things where, riding, the biggest craze, I guess, these days is, road biking, right? I don't particularly do that, but I got a lot of friends and people that I know that are big into the road biking. It's very social because, you go on your big rides and you socialize with everybody. So it's a great way to, get in shape and to keep active. But you got to do things that are interactive, and I still like playing sports for sure.
That's definitely that's definitely something I'm an advocate of. And the older I've gotten, the more I've realized the nutrition and the sleep also go a long way. But what about mentally? Do you have a group of people that you talk to, that you keep close group of friends? Or I've always been hesitant in, a formal mentorship program, because I feel like you don't have to label it. Just talk to someone that you come across and you feel like you can talk to, just talk to them. But do you have anything like that you rely on?
I think I do, because I've got some pretty close buddies that, some of them have been through some of the same challenges that I have. And, I'm just lucky that, these guys own businesses. They had marriages that didn't work. And so you can certainly get strength from that, if you're willing to share with them.
Sure.
And I think, when they're good friends, you're not concerned about your friendship being at risk. And
right.
The formal mentorship, it's, I've done a bit of that, like on both ends. I've, been a mentor and had a mentor and things like that. I think, at different times they fill a certain need. And I think there's no hard and fast rule in which way to do it. At certain times, if you're trying to deal with certain business issues, you find someone that can specialize in an area where you think you have issues. That can really be helpful. And I think you just need to be open-minded and willing to engage people and see what works best for you, right? I just don't think there's one specific way to do it in terms of how you relate with people on a mentorship level.
That makes sense. I get that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anyone alive or historical that you've looked up to, that any specific quotes that stand out, words to live by, things like that. And I'm going to follow that up with another cliched question, but it's a brace yourself.
Well, let's start with that one. There's a few people for sure. I think I'd have to put at the top of the list my dad, right? He both my parents led by example, right? And one of the things my dad taught me as a small child was, and it's stuck with me, was, treat people the way you want to be treated. Oh my God. It's such a simple element, and it just, it's really a guiding principle, right? And if you're ever feeling emotional in a situation, it's, if that's kind of at your core, even in a stressful situation, how would you want to be treated in that situation, right? And, Ali, you talked about our situation and our business arrangement, and, the fact that despite both our efforts to get that square peg into the round hole, it wasn't going to go. And, we had a contract and we came to an agreement, and we were able to, I think we treated each other the way we would have wanted to be treated, right? And
100%.
Yeah, and that's why our friendship has continued on, right? And I value our friendship.
Likewise. I was actually just going to use that as an example, because your contract was the first one that we ever had to sort of sever. And you were so cool through that process. You were such a gentleman about it. You were never yelling and screaming and angry, and you were just so cool. And it actually was terrible, because since you, I've had to deal with so many assholes, and it's always like, well, why couldn't it be like Jeff? It's been like, it's all downhill from there. But the truth is, I learned a real valuable lesson from you. I really did. I learned that, hey man, even if things don't work out, you can be an absolute gentleman through it, and it's probably going to be way better, because the other side's not going to be combative. They're going to be cooperative, and you're probably going to get way more of your way than if you go the other path.
Yeah, so I think, that was something that I've tried to impart on my children, but that was something that was handed down to me, by my dad. There was another gentleman that I met when I moved to Vancouver, and he was a very prominent Vancouver citizen, and he and I just happened to be in the same office area, and we just started talking and became friends and started going for lunch. And he ultimately was one of the guys that helped us start Vertex and supported us. And his view to, and he was, always dressed in a jacket and a tie and very proper that way. But he was willing to have a very open mind to people, right? And willing to listen and not to be judgmental. And because I watched how he operated, it had an influence on me for sure, right? And so, he just led by example, I think, more than anything he particularly said, right? And I've had a number of influence, like I say, through sports, right? I think back to some of my football days, right, where some of the stuff was kind of like dressing room talk for sure, but just guys that were able to set the foundation for hard work and success. And I'm sort of drawing a blank on some of the things that, as you were sort of asking about, like sayings and things like that.
That's okay. I mean, treat others as you want to be treated. I think that you don't get a whole lot better than that as far as social interactions concerned. But and then, I mean, if while I'm talking, if something comes to you, just jump in, Jeff.
Yeah, sure.
But the second cliched question I was going to ask you, we named this podcast Life's Golden Nuggets. And in part, it's because I come off as a real serious guy most of the time. And I didn't want to come up with some douchey title like Lessons Learned in War or some garbage like that. I wanted to keep it cool and keep it relaxed. And so, but it's true, because as you go through life, you pick up these little golden nuggets, these little lessons that you learn, words you live by, characteristics you'd like to have. But I'd love to get some of your principles, some of the golden nuggets, if you will, that you've collected along the way, and some of the things that you think are critical to have in your personality, your character, your day-to-day, whatever it may be.
Yeah, well, I think, integrity is a very important thing. And integrity means different things to different people, right? But from, my biggest interpretation of that is, say what you mean and mean what you say. And when you say something, it has to be truthful, right? And you have to believe in it, and you have to, if you say you're going to do something, you've got to be able to do it, right? And you want people to rely on you. You want to build trust with people. And it doesn't matter what business you're in.
Right.
You want people to trust you, right? And so you need to be able to, it's the same with raising kids. You want your kids to be able to trust you. So if you say something to them, you've got to be able to stand by it and live by it. You can't say, no cell phones at the dinner table and then sit at the dinner table and talk on the phone, right? You can't do that, right?
Right.
And so I'm simplifying that, but I think as a basic, it really forms a foundation for how you deal with people. And I think, alluding to one of your comments earlier about don't take yourself so seriously, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being serious and dealing with issues and being professional, but everybody's replaceable. And too many people think they're not replaceable, right? And you have to remember what's the real reason that you're there, right? And I think too many people get caught up in their belief system of what other people are thinking and not really staying true to their own mission statement.
Right.
And so, those are some of the key things I think are important for building a good foundation. And, interaction with people, how you treat people. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit already, but, in both situations, in easy situations and in tough situations, and probably far more so how you treat people in tough situations is how you're going to be known. Right? And that's where you need to, sometimes do the opposite of what you're actually thinking, right? Or feeling.
Right.
And it's a simple thing when you're driving in traffic and somebody cuts you off and you're like, oh, I just want to ram it, but you don't do it, right? You have to, in situations, think about doing the opposite to what you're feeling sometimes, right? And you'll find that when you do that, there's a great Seinfeld episode about that, right? George. Yes. George did everything the opposite.
The opposite.
Yeah. And his life went blissfully along, right? When he was doing the opposite of everything, right?
Yeah. Jeff, you are an absolute beauty, man. I have always been a huge fan. I can't thank you enough for doing this with us.
Thank you very much.
To us, it means a great deal. And everything you said makes so much sense. And your summary with integrity was very eloquent. And even though you said, you're simplifying it, I think you really said it well. And within that integrity, you touched on, trust and honesty. And I think it encompassed a lot of very positive, important messages. I really appreciate. You've always set a great example for me. I've always appreciated the friendship. Can't thank you enough for doing this. And I really hope that we didn't waste too much of your time. But
No. Very happy to do it, Ali.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Really
thank you very much.
it, man.
And hopefully we can do it in one room together sometime with a big cheeseburger on the plate.
That would be amazing, man. I mean, I would definitely hold you to that. Once the COVID quarantine is done, I'm going to try and set that up, Jeff.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. All the best.
Have a great day, guys.
You too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers.